Well, welcome back, and we're ready to move on to some grammar skills. Before I get into the ideas of the grammar skills, I want to mention that 4 of the 6 lessons in Book 1 have challenge conversations before and right after clap to stress. And those are designed to sort of help elevate your beginning students and to challenge your intermediate students with new concepts and conversations. And so you teach those just like you would the conversations from the earlier part of the lesson. So I just encourage you to use those as you move through, but not 2 of the 6 lessons will not have these challenge conversations in them. Just to remind you about that. Now, we are going to go to grammar skills. And the important reason why we have grammar skills and we're introducing some very basic grammar is that for many of your students, they come from a non-English speaking culture and language, and as a consequence, they may not have a large formal education. As a result, while they are learning English and learning English grammar, they may also be learning how their own oral language is functioning, how it's structured and put together. In fact, probably many of us who took languages in school, learned more about our own oral language that we have as our first language from the skills and the structures that we learned from our second language that we were learning. So we think that this also is what is happening with your students as they are learning English. They're learning more about their own language and how it's put together. So it's important that you take some time, help them. You'll also begin to understand if your students, how literate they are in their own language as well. So pay attention to how your students pick up a pencil or a pen, how they write. You may have to spend some time helping them learn how to hold a writing instrument and to be able to start forming the letters in the book. Now, I have tried to overcome some of this handicap for your very low-level students by introducing some things that they can trace, and we'll talk about that when we get into grammar. So grammar is really important. I want you to spend some time, and though this will be a short segment and there will be no practice time unless you want your students to practice during your training time. Now, for some students that come from a very high education culture, this may be too simple for them. And so it's not necessary for you to plod your way through something that they have already learned in their schooling or in their own country before they came here or before they started learning English. So consequently, you can just go as fast as your students understand. If you have different level students in the same class, then use your more advanced student to act as a teacher helper with those of lower level skills, and they can help one another, and actually you're helping to train that student to become a future teacher, right? That's always a good point. Now, grammar skills. One of the things we want to do in Book 1 is to introduce just the simple present tense and the present continuous tense. But the first thing, before we can start introducing verbs and tenses and things like that, we have to introduce the name of the objects that they've been learning in the other parts of the lesson. And so the first lesson in grammar skills, we will be introducing the word a noun. Now, lesson 1 is unique, and so I'm going to show you how, and in the how to teach a lesson in the front of the book tells you how to teach lesson 1. And then we'll turn to lesson 2, and I'll share a little bit of how you would do it a little differently lesson 2, because there's more writing involved in lesson 1. Now, in lesson 1, and you'll notice that in the grammar skills in lesson 1, you have in your grammar skills 3 pictures, and we're introducing the word a noun. Noun. What is a noun? Now, your job for your teachers and for your students is to tell your students, please listen. A noun. 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 A noun. A person, a man, a woman, myself, a person, a noun. Please repeat, a noun. And so you go through model, repeat, solo as they are saying the word noun or a noun. Then next, you say a person, a noun, a noun. A place, my home, this room, a city, a place. And then last is a noun is a thing, a bird, a rock, a table, a noun. Please repeat, a noun, and have them say it, a noun. A noun, a person, a noun. A place, a noun. A thing, a noun. A noun. Now, this is the first time that now your students will have their books open. Before that, this was all oral skills, and they were just listening and speaking and forming the words. Now this is more of a visual approach where they're going to look at their books. So each of your students will have their books open. So now, you and your partners then will stand in front or work alongside your students, and you'll say, a person. And you notice that in the page, the letters are in shaded form. And that's designed so that for your very, very beginning students, students who have come without any formal education or very little, or from a non-Roman script where it's not familiar to them, they can take a pencil or pen, whatever, and they can trace over the letters and write man. Now remember, these are all words that they've already learned in their vocabulary. So they've already heard them, they've already spoken them, they've heard them in maybe a conversation or interaction. So this should not be foreign to them. So you ask your student then to repeat man. And as they are writing the word and tracing over the letters, have them say the word man. Now if you're higher level students, they can do this, then just move on to the next portion of the lesson. And if it's too easy for them, you can move right on to lesson 2 or right to the Bible reading. So for your lower level students, we really are interested in having them learn how to identify what a noun is. It is a person. And so then they will turn the page and they will write in the letters. And right at the top there, you'll see right underneath in parentheses the words that they are to write on the lines. They are to trace and then write. And so you will just help them, encourage them, show them what they are to write. And so they're practicing their handwriting and they're saying the word, reinforcing what a noun is. And so then after they finish page 1-5 and 1-6 on the grammar part, then you will say, what is a noun? And you want them to respond, it's a person, it's a place, it's a thing. Give me examples of a person, and then have them share a word that would represent a person or a place or a thing. And all you're doing there is you're reviewing and you're reinforcing the words that they have already learned and already practiced. Now on the next page, on 1-7, is sort of a review. And I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time with your students to begin with, because these are going to be introduced throughout each of the lessons and reinforced. But you need to know, for your sake, about the indefinite article a, and how it is used in a sense. This is a book, and this and that. Now this and that will also be reinforced on the next lesson, lesson 2, and it will be combined with the plural, these and those. So you can just introduce through the challenge conversations, just remind them and review with them, this is a book and that is a book, showing distance. All right, and then you will just tell them, show them how we use the letter a in the singular and an when you're working with a word that begins with a vowel. That's simply all you have to do. And then you might tell them, if they come from a culture where English is not familiar to them, that when we ask questions, we raise our voice. We say, is this a book? What's your name? We raise our voice. And that will just give them a reminder, and you just tell them that, and maybe give them a few demonstrations, and maybe let them ask a question themselves, and let them raise their voice to show how asking a question. And then a little bit of punctuation, talking about question mark and period. So when they read something or they see something in a magazine or a newspaper or on a billboard or however, if they see that little mark, the little curly Q with the dot on it, they know it's a question. All right? So this shouldn't take a whole lot of time, but it is a beginning for you to help your students to begin understanding our grammar skills. And again, let me remind you that the importance of this is that for your very low beginning level students, they are learning a lot about their own oral language. As they are learning some of the structures of English, they're transferring it over to the structures of their own language. So review for those high level beginners or whatever, but if they're advanced level, you have people who know this from school, you can move quickly through it as a review course. Now, let's turn to Lesson 2. And Lesson 2 has a little different approach. Instead of having them write and trace, you're introducing some of the concepts through a visual aid of a little train, a locomotive. And here they are learning how to begin to see how our sentences are structured. And this not only helps them with the rhythm and the music pattern, but it also helps them to understand that in the English language, this is the way we think. A language structure really reflects the thinking process of a people group. And so in basic English, American English, we basically emphasize the importance of the subject, the person or the place or the thing, what it's doing, the verb form, and how that is being acted upon by an object. And there's several examples of all three. But here you want to spend time using this description to show how a subject and a verb and an object, and then to remind them that a subject is often a noun. The object can also be a noun, a person, a place, or a thing. What you need to do then is not only just show them and talk to them. This is where you try to avoid lecturing and giving it like a college course. What I would like to have you do is to be able to not only share with them, because they need to understand this, but you also need to say, okay, now here's some examples. Now, let's have you share some examples of a noun and put it into a simple sentence like what we've done in Lesson 1 with a pen, a cup, a book, and some of the things that we did back there. And remember, by this time, you've probably been meeting with your students 6 or 7 times. So you already know what their needs are and you know what they're capable of doing. So you adjust it to their level, their needs, and so you ask them, okay, share a simple sentence using a subject, a verb, and an object from what we have learned. And then you help them and prompt them and let them struggle, because really that's really how you learn English. You just have to struggle a little bit, put those words, remember what the words are, and to be able to put it all together. Let me just make a little sidebar here by saying a little sidelight that not only have you been meeting with your students for 6, 7, 8 times by the time you get to this second lesson, but also you have been coming back each time and doing a little review. So by the time you maybe get to this grammar section in Lesson 2, you have already gone through theme picture and the vocabulary and the pronunciation, clap to stress and things, and you've already been integrating all of this, and hopefully they have too, integrating it. So by the time you get to this section, it should be easily transferable into their whole mind of how we take these words and we put them into position in a sentence. And that's the whole purpose of this subject matter. All right? So I want to mention to this so that even though you're viewing this video and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't, this is coming right after one after another, I just want you to know that in the timeline for your classes, this will be happening maybe a month and a half after you've already been meeting with your students. And of course, you've already been working with your students in this video on your training. So by the time you get into lesson 1, you've already almost done half the lesson. And so this will be a good time for them to know what is approaching them. All right, so you would include more examples and show them and help them formulate words that are subject, nouns, and verbs and objects, and give them the idea that in English we think this way. You know, Bob goes to the store. Bob, you know, that's the person who we really focus on, is the person who does what? He goes. Where does he go? He goes to the store. So Bob goes to the store, and so you want to be able to show them how we put these words in order, because that's the way we think. Now on lesson 2, page 6 and 7, we introduce the personal pronoun. So now they can, instead of saying Bob or something, they can say I, you, he, she, it, me, and other words. We and you and they. So they're introducing the personal, in the singular, the personal pronouns, and they're beginning to introduce the fact that the subject can be more than a bird or a table doing, sitting on the floor or whatever. Here's a sentence that they can use, people, involved with people. So we've been working now on the personal pronouns, and as you see, you just work through this chart and have them understand that this is a noun, a person, and we have other words for it. Now when you turn the page, there are these sections in grammar called Let's Try It. And that's for you to work with your students. And let me again emphasize the importance of doing it orally first, and then have them write it. And then as they're saying it, they can write it in on the line. Now, on the other section, you notice that there's some charts now that introduce the simple present tense. The 3 main verbs in the English language that we use the most is to be, to have, and to do. And these charts will introduce, in this lesson and the next lesson, these 3 verb forms in the simple present tense. And so the charts are not for you to put on a board and try to lecture. The purpose is to show them examples, and you can use that, and that's why we have examples underneath the charts for them to see how we put these verb forms next and in between the subject and the direct object. And so that's why you have several examples. And so I want you to be able to just work with them slowly. Don't rush this. Make sure they understand the rationale behind why we put words in certain locations in our sentences. And if 10 examples or 10 practice sessions are not enough for your students, then add some more. And sort of move it around so that they can have opportunity to use several different types of verb forms and personal pronoun forms in each of the sentences. Now, if you want to take time right now and turn off the tape and work with your students, this might be a good time. Take about 15-20 minutes, sit down with your students right now, have them turn in their books as well, and help them through part of this grammar section, and then we're ready to come back and move on to the next section on identifying sounds. All right? Thanks a lot. We'll see you in a bit.